Good day, everybody. Welcome to the first fullish episode of Jerrod's Jaunt, a solo roleplay story. Officially, this is episode number 2, but I'm not entirely sure if we can include the wee little 80-second intro from last week as episode number 1. So, yeah, this is where it all really starts. First things first, thank you so much to those of you who have already subscribed to my wee little podcast. It is greatly appreciated, and the more subscriptions and the more likes I get, the more I'm encouraged to continue doing this. But how about me? I am your voice. I am the words in the ether. My name is Mike, or as you've seen in my moniker, I'm Magic Mike, but don't let that fool you. I'm not magic. The only thing that's magic about me is I'm Mike. And also, the name Magic Mike, yeah, I got that before the film came out. That's been rolling around my universe for a number of years, but I just go by Mike. If you want to call me Magic, you can call me Magic. But no, I'm Mike, and now I'm waffling. Anyway, what are we about? We are about solo role-playing. In particularly, solo role-playing using Cairn 2nd edition with my character Jerrod Blackmire, who is a ranger of sorts. It won't be just Cairn on its own. Obviously, I'm soloing, so I will be using other tools. And my main preference for my Oracle will be Mythic 2nd edition. Though, I will have other tools along the way as I was going through my many bits of paper earlier on, and I've already seen some additional bits that I might end up using. For example, the wilderness tables from Into the Weird and Wild, and also what else have I got? Oh yes, some tables from Ironsworn, because why the hell not? Hopefully I won't overdo it and give myself information overload, but you know, if I've got this stuff at hand and if it helps enhance the gameplay, then so be it. But because it's a solo game, I can change these things up and down as I go. Anyway, what am I looking at doing here? Well, the game itself, if anybody is familiar with Cairn, it's a rules-like system, but in particularly the reason for Cairn Toon. That's not right. Cairn. That's got to be a country somewhere. The reason for Cairn 2nd edition is that it's got a lot going for it compared to the early edition of Cairn. Very, as was it, about 10, 15, 20 pages, something like that. Yoshi Gard, the author, has actually fleshed out the system a lot more. But me being a solo player, I'm doing what a lot of solo players do, which is to take that system, admire it, go, I love that bit, love that bit, love that bit, love the bit. Right, how can I change it to suit my game? For me personally, the main aspect that I'll be changing or trying to add or create is a travel system, because now I could be wrong, and this could be something that you guys could fill me in on, but whenever I play games or look into playing games, there's so much information that I love about those particular games. But the one thing that I find lets it down for my style anyway is travel. You know, I'm never one to go, here's his adventure, he needs to go from that place to that place. Go one hex, you're there. Go fight, get your loot, be back, job done. My brain just can't cope with that. It needs to know the route, it needs to know the details in between. So as I create a travel system, or more to the point, the more I play the game, the more I can flesh out a travel system that I can then use and drop into any other game. So it suits my need. So even though Cairn 2E is a rules light game, I just think it's one thing I need to add to my gameplay. So the general theme that I'm looking at is going to be in a grimdark setting. I love Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay for that reason. I naturally gravitate to moody, dark, grim us against the world kind of scenario, trying to battle against an evil that you can't see, pulling yourself up from your bootstraps to try and get on with life. The land I've got in mind is, I'm seeing it very much in a sense of, think like Scotch Highlands. He's a ranger. He can cover a vast amount of the land. He wants to protect the land, but he doesn't really answer to anybody. He lives by his rules. He has a moral code. He doesn't follow any lord. He doesn't follow any nobility. He doesn't follow any form of royalty. This is just what he does. As for the people, we are going to get introduced to them as we go. I have drawn up a rough setting, which includes factions and a rough story point or adventure seed that we can have a look at later on. But for the time being, there's a lot of things that I still need to flesh out, including even with the NPCs. Now, there's something I was seeing on the Grouch Couch. Turk, worth checking out the Grouch Couch. Turk, he's a very, very energetic, very enthusiastic chap, I would say. But he has a lot of advice and he posts a lot of videos how best to work your solo games so they work for you. And this is a point that he brought up recently using the Mythic magazine. And what this is all about prep. What things that we need to do, to try and have a generally successful game. And it's what we generate beforehand. So in this particular scenario, he was talking about you generate your NPC pool rather than generate during play. For example, Jerrod, he is a man of the land. In his time as a ranger, he would have encountered a lot of people. Some may be enemies, some may be colleagues, some may be friends. These are people that you could generate beforehand and add to an NPC list. So when you're using Mythic, again, I will talk about when I'm playing the game how I'm going to be using Mythic, because everything that I will do, it will come with an explanation. So I'm not just going to be telling a story. I'm not going to be making stuff up just to fill time. I'm going to be rolling dice as I record, and I'll be explaining what I'm doing, and I'll be telling the dice numbers, and then, so you can follow my track. So back to the NPC pools. I will then have this list pre-prepared, so when the game calls for it, I can pull out an NPC at the drop of a hat. The same thing will be very similar with encounter tables. Now, I've already made a start on generating my bestiary. Again, the good thing with Cairn is that it comes with a really solid bestiary. Again, this is something I find lacks with quite a lot of the games I have, where it may have a bestiary, but it's quite thin. I like to have a lot at hand, rather than me having to try and generate monsters, people, as I play. Even though Cairn, it does actually have a monster creation rule set or tables, it's got a nice bestiary. And what I've done is to sit within the confines of my game. I've pulled out all the creatures that I think will best sit in my land, set in my grimdark setting, along with humans that are already statted for within the game. So again, it'll all be on my list. If I need to roll one, I can roll one up. If, depending where my character is going to be at the time, depending where Jerrod is, there will be a table of beasts that will be familiar to that region. So for example, if he finds himself in a graveyard one night, I'm going to have a list of monsters already ready rolled that if he encounters, I can roll a d10, pull one of those out. That is his encounter for the night or for that particular moment in time. Looking at Jerrod himself, I've already rolled up his character sheets, and I'm going to have a quick run through what I have down for him. So, as I said, Jerrod is a ranger. Now, the ranger isn't really somebody who is in the Cairn second edition. Well, he's not written as a ranger per se, but, there's a couple of references in the back. Within the front, within the book, the nearest you're going to find to him or is somebody they call is a character class called a March Guard. So that's the nearest thing to it. But as I'm playing solo, I've created what I think is a ranger using the information I can find in the book. For example, his traits: he's rugged, weathered skinned, long hair, sharp face, blunt speech, frayed clothes, honourable, and vengeful. Kind of goes back to what I was saying about Jerrod. He's a man of honour. He wants to look after the land. He wants to do the best for everything around him, and yet he doesn't answer to anybody apart from himself. As a ranger, he will know the land, or he has a good idea of tracking. So within my notes for him for scouting, he gets effectively a +1 bonus on scouting, and his inventory is he wears boiled leather, which gives him a +1 to armor. He has a sword that does D8 damage, a crossbow that does D8 damage. Rations, he's got 3 rations, 3 bandages, and 3 torches. His actual stats are strength 14, dexterity 13, wits 12, and he has hit protection of 4. Now, HP in Cairn isn't like how you might associate HP in most role-playing games. So HP, it doesn't indicate the character's health or fortitude, nor do they lose it for very long. So, for example, when it comes to combat, if your HP goes down to 0, then you take a scar. If your HP drops below 0, then you start taking it off a specific stat. So, in this case, if he was in combat and his HP was below 0, then you would start losing off strength. But as I said, I will explain all this in more detail as I'm playing. At least that way you can actually understand it as I understand it. And then you can throw in your questions after the fact. And if you think I'm doing something wrong, great, you can let me know. There's going to be a lot of this stuff that I do, which I'm potentially going to homebrew anyway, because again, Cairn wasn't designed as a solo game. So I'm going to be tweaking bits as I play. Going back to the story that I've generated, what we're looking at the moment is that Jerrod, he is camping outside of the town of Glenwood. During the night, he is approached by a hooded man, which, isn't normally a good thing, being approached at night by a hooded man. But anyway, this man has a proposal for Jerrod, as he is an agent of one of the factions that are around the area that Jerrod works in. One of these factions are looking for specific items. Now, these specific items, on their own, they don't do anything. But once they've pulled them all together, it will allow them to open a door to bring in creatures from another plane of existence, if you like. Think of it in terms of something more Lovecraftian, the great old ones. They don't know the reason behind this. All they know is that they need to find these items before this other faction does, in order to prevent this potential catastrophe. That is where the story is at the moment, and Jerrod will have no doubt accept it, otherwise why would I be doing this? That is where I currently sit with the storyline. The hooded man, all I know about him so far is, as I say, he is a spy of sorts. He is part of the faction that are looking for these items, but he's also there to stop them as well. But he needs help. But as a spy, and he's a noble spy as well, in other words, he's part of the nobility of the area. He can't make himself known because he's also part of a larger network. So they need somebody who has no ties to anybody. This is why Jerrod is a good fit for their cause. As I mentioned earlier on, he has no ties to nobility, he has no ties to anybody. He lives for the land and for himself. So the land is in danger. They've approached him to help them, rid them of this potential danger, and that is where he will begin his story. The basis of the story was created by using all the existing tables in the current Cairn 2nd edition book. This is actually quite a good thing in terms of helping to create plot lines, storylines, because the many faction tables and generational tables that come with the book allow themselves to be used in this way. Even though Cairn 2nd edition isn't a solo game in itself, it does actually have enough meat on the bones where, as I'm doing with this, where all you need is a GM emulator of some sort that you can actually generate pretty much a lot of what you need through using Cairn 2nd edition. For this week, I'm going to leave it there. When we next talk, hopefully I will be in a position to where we can actually start playing. But in the meantime, I thank you for your listening. If you like what I'm doing, please do like, subscribe and share. And I will speak to you next time. Ta-ta!